All right, so just have to edit the stream. One sec.
Hi, hello Ev. I'm M. Shanae, and I'm going to be helping Smog go through the questions with y'all.
Hey, nice to meet you.
Yep.
We've talked on SBAF sometimes, right?
Yep, we have.
Nice.
Sorry guys, I just have to edit this stream title because it has the title of our podcast we just did. Just gotta edit that. One sec. Okay, I got the link. I'm gonna just post it in the announcements. One second. Okay, I just posted the link in the announcement, so if you want to share it, feel free.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Okay, great.
I'll do that right now.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. I'm posting on HeadFi too in the members lounge.
Oh, nice. You going all out?
All right. So that's looks good. Everything looks good. And all right. So welcome to the kind of Sonic Visions interview with ETA Headphones. We have Ev and Tommy joining us. Thanks a lot, guys, for doing this interview. How are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. And of course, we got our kind of returning guest to the Sonic Visions podcast, Cybernetic Ape. How are you doing?
Well, thanks for having me again, Smog.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, we just wanted to ask you some questions. You guys are doing kind of a kind of fairly unique thing in many of that things you're doing are very unique and it's very interesting. So, thought we'd ask you some questions. Cybernetic, you want to kick it off with the first question?
Sure can.
All right.
Guys, we are curious what got you into hi-fi audio?
Maybe you take this one, or you want me to hit it off?
You can start.
Cool. Yeah, so my dad was an audiophile in the 80s before I was born. I'm 27 for reference, so I'm a pretty young person. But when my brother and I were born, my mom told my dad, like, get rid of all of your audio stuff. It's like, too big, takes up too much space, and whatever. So yeah, my dad always had like, little compromised things, like little like CD bays you could pop in the CD and listen on tiny speakers, or, like a Bose wave radio, or just little things like that he liked to play with. And he always kind of included me. I always like listened in and, enjoyed what I heard, and we talked about it. So it was always just like something around when I grew up. And, I was a musician through a lot of like high school and junior high. And, it's kind of just like been with me from the beginning. So it's kind of hard for me to say, if I had like a defining moment where I hopped in.
Cool.
For me, I I think I got into hi-fi like right after I finished college. Um, like for New Year's, I got like $200 from my uncle for like for New Year's, and I didn't know what to spend it on, and I thought, hey, maybe I should get Beats by Dre or something. So so I was looking into like YouTube review videos. Yeah, and I accidentally stumbled upon Jude's one of Jude's Head5 videos. It was titled, "Are you thinking of buying Beats by Dre? Buy these instead." And then I clicked it, and then that's kind of how I got started. I ended up buying a Sennheiser 6XX instead of Beats by Dre. Thanks to Jude, and then this whole thing started, basically.
Yeah, my first nice pair of headphones I got in high school, and at the time I was picking between a DT880, HD600, and like a K701 from AKG, and those were like the big three. And I ended up getting the DT880. I guess that was my first like nice pair of headphones. So yeah, kind of interesting where we come from.
Yeah,
And
those are some classics. Yeah. So sorry, Cybernetic. What were you saying?
Yeah, no, Chef, we're about the same age, and the DT80 was my first serious headphone after I moved on from a fucking XB700.
Nice. Yeah,
Nice.
I ended up buying the DT880s because my dad let me borrow his Bose like Quiet Comfort, whatever product number it was at the time, and I broke them when I was trying to like mix for my friend's death metal band. And then I was like, I'm gonna get myself a pair of headphones I can try to mix on my laptop, and yeah, I'll kind of went from there.
So then the transition from that being into hi-fi. Tell us about the transition into the idea of starting your own headphone company and making your own headphones.
Yeah. So for me, it's like there's a very long overarching narrative that kind of like led me to this point. After high school, I went to film school, and there were very few like film and mixing stages that you could work on as a student. But you had a lot of film projects you had to turn at the end of the semester. So for me, one of my biggest frustrations was when I would mix things on my headphones on my laptop and I would take it into the theater, what I heard back sounded very unlike what I heard on my headphones. So that kind of like started me down the rabbit hole of thinking like, hey, can I modify my headphones to give me like more of the sound that I get from speakers? And of course, like that's impossible to achieve for several reasons. But yeah, it like started me off modding. I kept tweaking a lot of headphones I had, pouring more money into it, and getting more and more frustrated because I would hit dead ends with mods. And even though I was having a good time, and a lot of people would like send their headphones to me to work on, I always wanted to kind of break free from the constraints of having to work with headphones that already existed. So yeah, over time, it changed from modding headphones for myself to modding headphones for others. And then eventually just thinking, you know what, I could team up with someone who has a 3D printer and design skills like Tommy, and we can, make things from scratch and have a lot more freedom about what we're doing.
Oh yeah, so I did when I met I actually met Ev at Upscale Audio when I went to visit to check out the ZMF Verte that when they just came out. Um and then he used to work there, and then like he was like telling me about like different headphones, and then later I was like, oh yeah, I really want to get into like I want to learn more about like different stuff about headphones. And then he told me about SBAF, the forum, and then that's how I kind of got into the forum. And then I've always watched Ev's like modding threads very closely, and I actually was one of the first customers for his ESX 900 mod. And
Nice.
then yeah, and then like we've been like texting back and forth, and um uh let's see, like when he was like trying to jump from modding to like making full headphones, it was kind of like the same time I kind of learned started to how to 3D print, and then the timing just kind of worked out, and we only live like 40 minutes from each other.
Yeah.
It just like all kind of made sense, and yeah, and then before ETA, it was actually me and another Discord person. He used to go by Buns on Sonic Visions. If you guys remember him.
Right.
Yeah, he's pretty busy. He's really busy right now, so he's like not very active online. But yeah, that so it was originally me and Buns that were just like, hey, you want to just like make headphones? And then he was like, yeah, let's do it. And then it just happened. And then I was just like making dumb headphone like shells and stuff. But then like I feel like I was kind of missing something like the basically like the sound engineering aspect that you would get from like an experienced modder. And then I would like text Ev about like, hey, I have this, I just made this, like what can I do to like tweak like this area to get more of like this and less of that. And then we were like he was very helpful and he was like telling me what to do, like what I should try to do. And it was like, hey, you know, if you need another person in the team, maybe we can just like get a team together. And then that's kind of how ETA started.
Yeah, like when I was doing ESX 900 mods, which was like just the only thing I was doing for a while, I was working with a guy who cut things on a lathe from Wabi Sabi Headphones, who specializes in like building custom grados. He does really beautiful work, but yeah, I kind of like pushed him a little bit to like do some wackier things for some ideas I had in mind, and he was really great to work with, but it would take like 6 or 8 weeks to get some shells done, and I'd constantly be complaining to Tommy about things that Tommy had the skills to help me with, and then he was constantly complaining to me about things I could help him with. So it just kind of like one day we're just like, you know what, why aren't we just, a team? And then it all kind of came together.
Very cool. Yeah, Bruce is a nice guy. I've gotten a couple of things from him, but he's pretty specific about what he likes to do, and the experiments are sometimes not as quick to turn around. Let me ask though, guys, if you would appreciate kind of sharing some of your like what's your motto, what's your thesis, what's the aim of ETA? I mean, it sounds like you both wanted something better than what was available, but like what's the word? What is the vision, you know?
Yeah, so for me, I like just modding things constantly. I always got really frustrated about headphones that were very, very difficult to disassemble and make tweaks on and put back together. Because I was just pouring hours and hours of effort into trying to chase a sound that I wanted, lots of trial and error. So I thought, if I could adjust these parameters um, a little bit more meticulously, have more control, and come up with a design that's easier to change, then I could essentially rapid iterate a lot faster until I kind of narrow in on the sound that I want. So part of like the impetus for our designs and ETA is like headphones that are very, very tunable by the end user, especially on some of our early models that early adopters have hopped on. But yeah, it's the kind of headphone that can sound like 100 different ways, and it takes like two like minutes to make those changes, as opposed to like doing guesswork and not knowing what's going to happen. Um, so yeah, there's a lot of like community engagement, a lot of like Q&A that happens with people who own the headphones asking me, hey, I want to like emphasize this or like get rid of that. What can I do to change the sound of the headphone? And then I provide guidance and whatnot. And it's almost like building more of a relationship and rapport with the people who own the headphones, as opposed to just like selling the headphones. And if you like it, that's great. And if you don't, then too bad for you. Like, I really like the collaborative aspect of trying to come up with a personalized sound signature based on, what kind of gear the person already has who receives the headphone, what they like, so on and so forth.
Cool. Do you want to continue to build that community engagement and just kind of focus on this as a passion project, or do you want to take it into a direction where it becomes, a more sustainable source of income for yourself and more like a career path moving forward?
It's definitely a bit of both. I definitely recognize that not everybody who wants a nice pair of headphones wants to spend hours upon hours, tweaking them, getting them to sound a certain way. So we definitely have been working on some designs that are a bit more locked in, off the shelf, ready to go. And a lot of the choices that go into locking in aspects of the design to get a certain sound come from those more passion project, relationship building headphone projects. Because I'm constantly polling people's tastes, what people like, what people don't, and getting a better idea of what kind of aspects to incorporate in future products, so that they kind of had a broader scope of appeal without needing those adjustments. So yeah, I guess it's a bit of both. I definitely will never stop having that modders attitude and that passion for experimenting and throwing bad ideas at the wall until something sticks. But yeah, I also think that in some time we have some pretty compelling options at a fairly low price that I think would be more accessible to someone who doesn't want to modify anything and just wants a great set of headphones for a reasonable price.
So, I mean, that sounds like a very unique aspect to your whole kind of business model and the whole concept of kind of customizable headphones, and that have a change in the sonic quality of the headphones. That's quite unique. What other kind of unique qualities do your headphones bring?
I don't know if you want to chime in at any point, Tommy, because I can just rant and info dump for hours and hours. But yeah,
You're good, dude.
cool. Yeah, so one thing that I've been focusing on a lot lately, and Tommy's been really helpful at helping me figure this out, is finding ways essentially to eliminate or suspend the baffle of the headphone in the design, such that there aren't any hard materials that cause reflections between where the driver sits in the headphone and your ears. Instead of using meshes or screens for baffle materials like a lot of other open back dynamic headphones, a lot of our designs use foam, which is kind of an interesting approach because open cell foam does allow air to breathe through, but it kind of has a variable amount of resistance depending on how far the air has to travel to leave the enclosure and so on and so forth. So I guess one of the main features of our design that kind of sets it apart from a lot of other designs is that we're really trying to optimize airflow on both the front side and the back side of where the driver sits in the shell, so that we have a lot of control over the bass response and the tonality and the transient profile and so on and so forth. So yeah, I guess there's more incorporation of soft materials in ETA headphones than in a lot of off-the-shelf headphones, which in part is due to the fact that we don't have to rely on constraints of something being ready for mass production. We can kind of just produce things that are fine to be one-off and individualized, because we spend more time making every set.
That's interesting, and I guess, yeah, I mean that certainly is a unique kind of aspect of things, and it seems to me that you guys are very focused on, the nuance and the character of the sound, the timbre, that kind of thing, and that, using things like foam would allow you to kind of tune that more than something just like a mesh. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know how much you know about headphone modding, but something I've learned from modifying dynamic headphones over a long period of time is that the thicker the baffle is and the more air pressure that you trap on the ear side, the more bass that you get, until you trap so much that you get driver flex and then you start losing extension. So something like foam, effectively you can change it to a firmer or less firm foam to adjust how much air is escaping. So it's kind of if you think about it in terms of a type of equalizer, but doing it in the physical domain as opposed to electronic or digital domain, that's kind of the type of adjustment you get when you have something like foam with an entire spectrum of variation that you can implement.
Yeah, I like that. Physical equalizer. That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah, I did some headphone modding way back when. I did the Purrin mod on my first woodback, and it was always very cool. Graphene, though, is something that you guys have honed in on now, I see for some of the models. What drew you to it? What made it your kind of go-to for these early and kind of introductory first models that you're bringing out and introducing to the community?
Yeah, so I think maybe Tommy can speak to this as well because he's also heard all the drivers we tried. And graphene has a lot of interesting material properties. It's very rigid, it's very lightweight, it has very low material resonance. But beyond all of that, I would kind of take the more subjectivist stance and say, the reason we picked it is just because it sounds the best of what we tried. Yeah, the driver we're using is actually based on a TH900 driver. It just has a modified diaphragm, modified magnet, and modified voice coil for higher impedance, but the kind of shape and magnet structure and the flexing surround on the edge of the driver are all shared with kind of the common like Fostic style dynamic drivers.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's really interesting. When I think of graphene, the first thing that comes to my mind is, and I don't know how much you guys are into speakers, but is Magico. They've selected graphene for a lot of their products, and so it seems like it's a material that is very desirable, and obviously you found that to be the case. What other materials did you kind of explore before you settled on graphene?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, tell me if you want to take this. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say we've tried a lot. Like, other than graphene, there was like wool, biocellulose, uh, beryllium coated PT, I think. There was magnesium, aluminum, like Focal. What else is there?
We also had Nomex and titanium and LCP, like Sony drivers. Pretty much every possible option we could find from a variety of driver suppliers, we just tried every single one.
Yeah, we didn't also just like use whatever the stock we had. We always like try to tweak, put our own spin on it. Like we use like N52 magnets instead of like something weaker like N42. Try to change the impedance like 300, 600, 32. Um, yeah, and then like sometimes like and then we have like a 70 millimeter driver, biocellulose driver all the way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things that I would want to emphasize about the driver is that the actual driver technology and the layout, it's not like especially patentable technology. It's a pretty conventional dynamic driver. But we're really trying to like take the classics and implement them really well. So like it's a conventional dynamic driver, but yeah, we like no expense spared on the magnet. We're using N52 magnets, which are the strongest of any driver off the shelf. Yeah, and it's like the magnet, of course, like has inherent qualities that affect the voice coil as the driver excurts. So using a stronger magnet is like definitely something that can increase like the dynamics, the resolution, so on and so forth. But yeah, it's pretty wild to me like how many products come out that don't use top of the line magnets, because oftentimes like when you're purchasing a driver, the difference between an N42 and an N52 magnet, which is like a substantial amount of Gauss different, is only a matter of like dollars and cents per driver. So in my mind, it's like there's really no excuse not to use the strongest magnets possible in every circumstance.
Yeah, that reminds me of the Kevin Deal videos where he talks about how they're the big companies are like trying to get everything down to the penny. They're trying to control costs to the penny and cheap out on parts and that kind of thing. And obviously, if you have this more kind of handcrafted, careful approach, then you're able to not do that. You're able to just your first thought is, how do I make the headphones sound the best that I possibly can, rather than how do I make the most profit, right? And I think that is really something that's fantastic, because obviously we're gonna we as audiophiles are gonna benefit as a result of that.
Yeah, for me, it's like I always like. I mean, I used to work in audio retail, and I would always tell people, instead of just reading reviews about products in a vacuum, instead, like think of it in a goal-oriented way. Think about the sound that you want, and then strategize and make decisions that you think will lead you to that. because there is no like, ultimate barometer of performance. And that's true for like designing headphones as well. The choices that you make in the enclosure design will affect, the sonic end result just as much as what driver you're using, and so on and so forth. So yeah, thinking big picture about, what kind of sound you want, is just as important when designing headphones. And I think that's something that we pour a lot of effort into because, we're chasing a performance target, not a marketability target, not a sales target, nothing like that. We have nobody to please except for ourselves and the people who support us.
So speaking of performance targets, when we think of a performance target, I mean, obviously price is a factor, right? Because if we have a budget of $5,000 or a very big budget, then there's more that you potentially can do, versus a $500 budget. Now, I guess my kind, sorry for these extra questions, but it's very fascinating, and so I wanted to just kind of throw in some extra things if you don't mind. But I guess my question is, with this kind of now all these emerging top of the line, so-called top of the line headphones that are more and more expensive, is the goal or is your target in your mind something that would quote unquote compete, let's say in your eyes, in terms of your taste or the customers you have now, with these very much flagship, very expensive headphones? Or are you like if let's say you have a $500 or $1,000 ETA headphone, is that supposed to be comparable, for example, in technicalities, to $1,000 production headphone out of Sennheiser or out of any kind of company? Or are you aiming to in fact have a higher value proposition and compete with much more expensive headphones in terms of technicalities and things like that? Obviously, this is subjective, and there's a huge subjective component to things. But obviously, if you talk to Uncle Ruckus, he's gonna say HDE 650 blows away Susvara, that kind of thing. But I hope I'm making sense with my question.
Yeah, so I think an interesting space in that regard, because we see headphone prices going up a lot, and a lot of the time what determines a headphone's price, of course, is like the amount of patentable technology and research that goes into it. And like I said before, there is no patentable technology or like emergent driver technology that goes into ETA headphones. Like, it's all about the acoustic design, the implementation, the control of that driver. I would say that an ETA headphone that's well designed, and especially if you get one that is tweakable to your preference and you dial it into your preference, I guess I'd refrain to comment on technicalities, but in terms of musical engagement, my target is definitely to make a headphone that is enjoyable with as much music as possible, without like reservations. I know that other members have compared ETA headphones to much more expensive headphones in a favorable light. And I don't want to put anybody else down, but one of the other factors in my mind is like thinking about total system cost. You could buy a Susvara for $6,000 and put it with a $500 amp for a $6,500 total budget, or you could buy a $500 ETA headphone and have $6,000 for your amp. And I think that that's a very interesting way of looking at it, that it's like about the total system value. So when you save a lot on a nice pair of headphones, how much more you could put into the electronics that are pushing them, and also improve the sound of your other headphones in the process.
I think you guys are definitely going to have success in focusing on that, on building a brand that is focused on the enthusiasts that can have a platform to tinker, but maybe the people who don't necessarily want to invest that time. You've got the passion and the love for the community, but then also the convenience of a really top shelf product. Like I've heard so far, it's solid, but the cost of entry is kind of a lot when there are systems that can be more, more competitive. You know what I mean? So it's always exciting to see, brands like you guys who still have that passion, who still have nothing to prove but to yourselves and to your supporters. My next question for you guys, though, is in terms of that system, do you have certain components or preferences for what you think pairs nicely with your brand? Tubes versus solid state, or DACs that are maybe more favorable than others for your products.
Yeah, I would love to hear Tommy's take on this. But for me, I think it's a little bit hard. to like make statements about what will and won't work necessarily in every case with our headphones, just because the headphones oftentimes are tunable. So sometimes when I'm getting someone a pair of ETA headphones, I think about how to change the headphone to suit their system as opposed to how to change the system to suit their headphone. But yeah, there are still some like general tendencies that I think maybe Tommy could chime in on.
Let's say, I guess from personal experience, I generally prefer Genesis with a more like solid state like sound. But I'm not saying that you need to have a solid state to have good synergy. I've had plenty of tube amps that paired well with Genesis as well. But something that's like relatively affordable that I really liked was trying Genesis with actually Ev's first watt clone F7 out of the speaker tabs. I thought it had like such a good drive and like just overall slam capability. I feel like they kind of like maximize each other's strengths without making it like veiled or unresolving, I guess. But if you have like the budget to go like balls deep with like I got $1,000 tube amps, you can certainly use Genesis and like you can definitely hear a difference between sources too. Like we're not gonna claim like oh like Genesis is like it's gonna out resolve X or Y headphones. I mean we would much rather leave that up to the owners and people that hear the headphones.
Yeah, I'd say just to like add a bit to like component matching questions. In the very early release of Genesis prototypes that were kind of like focus group oriented, um, a lot of people were having some like troubles with synergy because people had kind of headphone setups that were optimized for like a Sennheiser type sound. So when they moved over to Genesis type sound, which like the early prototypes had quite a bit of a downsloping response with a sub bass emphasis. They were having some issues with like maybe an overbearing sense of warmth. But since then, we've like definitely changed how we treat the drivers and added more configurability options in terms of like the front baffle treatment with the foams. That kind of like open up the options a bit more. And now I think if your system is kind of warmly tuned, or if it is a bit bright and sharper sounding, regardless, you could always talk to me and tell me, hey, this is what I'm using, what should I do to my headphone to like get it to mesh, and then we can kind of like strategize and figure it out.
If I may, what models do you guys currently have with that in mind that are maybe optimized for different kinds of systems? And then in the future, what models and kind of what price points do you have in mind for adding and expanding the catalog?
Tommy, you want to take this? I know like some of this stuff is a little bit up in the air because we kind of like do things on a rolling out basis, and we were kind of beta testing for a while, but we have some things that are starting to lock in.
Yeah, so we have Genesis that's in production, and we have another model on your headphone called Supra that is almost ready. We're just getting like the final tweaks before we officially launch it, and we're gonna do a loaner tour soon. Hopefully, maybe we can do a little tour for Sonic Visions as well, if you guys would be interested.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Genesis is a conventional circumaural headphone. It's got leather pads. It goes around your ears, and that one is definitely the most configurable headphone that we have to date. Just in terms of the range of things that you can change easily, the types of tunings that you can get. And that one, depending on if you have your own headband, have your own cable, or need the whole kit or whatever, is probably about between $750 and $900 or so. And then the Supra, which is an on-ear, is closer to 500, just for kind of like a price idea, though sometimes things can wiggle around a little bit depending on the circumstance or if we have V stock and so on and so forth.
Forward to Well, seeing some progression there, I'm sure that we would love to be a part of that tour, be able to give you guys some feedback and just share in the excitement. Our next question, though, is what are some of the challenges that you guys have overcome in making a headphone that is both moddable, tunable, but also durable and long lasting?
I mean, any thoughts, or should I go for it?
You can start, and then I can add in or chime in whenever.
Yeah, so very early on, a lot of aspects of driver treatment and baffle treatment were soft materials that I would hand cut and apply and then send them to the prospective owner. Um, so, for example, we have foam that sits on the front baffle. I used to cut those by hand from a larger sheet, and because I was using scissors and leather cutting dies, sometimes the cuts would be a bit inconsistent, which would lead to pretty severe like channel imbalances between sets. So one of the issues was driver matching before I shipped them out. Um, but thankfully, like we've worked with the driver supplier, we figured out various things that have dialed that in, so the consistency is much improved. We used to also have a way of dealing with the venting on the back of the driver magnet that used some cotton fiber that also presented some issues. But yeah, we're always trying to tighten things up. It's always like getting a lot more consistent, and of course, like driver matching is something that I do very, very meticulously before each set goes out. Even though sometimes that changes when things get moved around. But yeah, the consistency aspect, I guess, was something that was very hard at first, but we're always improving on.
Getting back to the drivers themselves, we touched on that earlier, but I mean, you've obviously chosen dynamic drivers. Are there any thoughts on potentially other driver types for future ETA headphones, or have you explored that at all already, such as planers, ribbons, electrostats, like all that kind of thing?
Yeah. So part of the choice of using dynamic drivers is that a lot of the driver manufacturers who are willing to make customizations for us were already using dynamic drivers. Another aspect of that choice was just that I was very familiar with TH900 drivers, which our drivers are modeled off of just from doing a lot of modding commissions, writing a lot of threads about how to modify those headphones. Um, but independent of that, planar magnetic drivers, they do have a lot of like theoretical benefits over dynamic drivers just because they have a larger surface area, some more evenly distributed front wave, so on and so forth. But planar drivers oftentimes are so large that they take up most of the front baffle of the headphone and they make up for most of the weight. A lot of the kind of sonic playground aspects of ETA that keeps me excited is the fact that, a driver is a much smaller part of the bigger picture when compared to a planar magnetic, when a lot of the performance you get just comes down to the driver and its characteristics.
Right, right. So the thought is that going forward, sticking to dynamic drivers, uh, for now at least.
Yeah, I love to branch out, and I used to work a lot with planar magnetics before I transitioned to dynamics. And I think I would definitely be open to doing planars in the future, but for now, just due to the people we're working with and how much like initial investment we have to work with, we're like a little bit locked into using dynamics. But to be honest, like I don't feel terribly restricted by that. A lot of things that people value planar magnetics for, like their very deep bass extension, is something that I am very confident that our drivers are able to reproduce. I mean, every one of our headphones can extend down to 10 hertz effortlessly, and they're dynamic drivers. And yeah, I think a lot of that just comes down to the way that we deal with the front wave. Um, but yeah, I like working with dynamic, so I think we'll probably stick with it for a bit until we've exhausted all of the potential there is there.
And you have the advantage of the dynamic slam, and the quote unquote macro contrast, that kind of thing. Those words have been thrown around a lot lately, but I guess that's an obvious advantage. I mean, for me, when I've always said this, but I've directly compared, not to mention other brands, but I've directly compared the ZMF Atticus with the Abyss TC, and I found that the Atticus had so much more slam and impact, and so that to me is a huge advantage of dynamic driver headphones.
Speaking of the Atticus, I actually have been working on a a modding project using HTA 100 drivers. So
Cool.
what the biggest issue with the HTA 100 stock is like the sub bass roll off. So I've been trying to like mod it to basically have it go flat up to 20 hertz, and my latest revision kind of got that, and then it kind of has like a similar, slightly downslope frequency response of like the Atticus. Then you get the resolving and dynamic nuance of the HD800 driver.
Wow, that sounds incredible. And is it so you're using an Atticus like housing?
No, this is like totally designed
Oh,
like my own design using 3D
wow.
printer. But yeah, it has like a similar ish like tuning to it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, one thing that I think has become like remarkably apparent, more apparent from my time working with ETA than just being a modder, is that so much of the sound of a headphone, especially with dynamic drivers, is not due to the drivers themselves. You know, it's due to what you put the drivers in and how the sound flows to your ears, what happens on the backside. Like, you know, Tommy's HD800 driver based headphone really sounds nothing at all like an actual HD800, which I think is like a very interesting thing to be able to compare them directly and see how much range there is out of the same driver.
Yeah, I was very surprised like when we had the ETA meet last week. Um, I got some like pretty good feedback, which I wasn't really expecting. And yeah, like I think going with what Ev said, like even if we do stick with dynamic drivers, there's a lot of different ways we can implement it. Like another one we're thinking of designing is the open baffle style dynamic driver headphone, like AKG one K1000 or like the raw style. In the
Right.
70 millimeter dynamic driver, with using like custom like open baffles that we're gonna design.
That's interesting. Wow.
What kind of peak like kind of like led to that idea was I had this headphone from Blonde. I don't know, I don't remember the exact name, but then like when I got the headphone, the fit was terrible. Like when you try to put it on your head, like it wouldn't close or seal properly. Like you would, there was like a big gap between your ears and the headphone. And then there was like all the screws were stripped too, so I couldn't like try to fix it or anything. So I just like gave it to Marv to get it measured. And then when Marv measured it on SPAV, he talked about how the 70 millimeter driver had this like linear bass response, even though there was a big gap between the space between your ears and the headphone. And then I was like, hey, we can probably do an open baffle design using these drivers because like of the giant just like sheer size of the drivers. So I think like even if we do stick with dynamics mainly, I think you'll see a lot of innovations from us.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. Like in the example of the blonde. Sorry to interrupt you, Cybernetic. Yeah, in the example of the blonde, seeing this headphone uses similar 70 millimeter drivers as the ones we're using, and then kind of going over blonde's head and seeing, hey, where do they source their drivers? And then contacting that driver manufacturer saying, hey, can you make this driver better? Can you put those N52 magnets in? Can you make it 300 ohms? Can you put a grill on it that's less obstructive? And being able to make those adjustments it's kind of like the cherry on top, and starting with a better driver, even though it was kind of like inspired by an existing design, is like something that's really refreshing, kind of like taking these leads from designs that already exist and trying to find ways to kind of improve on their shortcomings.
Very awesome. Last question for you guys is, are you thinking that you're going to continue to just focus on direct to consumer, or do you think you'll get to a point where you want to sell to both distributors as well as to people directly and individually?
It's a tough one. my heart tells me that I really like being hands-on with every person who, owns an ETA headphone. So I probably would want to keep it direct to consumer, but we also don't know what's ahead. We are constantly trying to optimize our designs to be better, more consistent, more reproducible. So if we ever had an opportunity to say, make 10,000 or 20,000 units at once, maybe that would be something we would consider, but we're definitely not there yet. It's kind of, we're a team of 3 people. We only have so many hours in the day. So we're kind of, yeah, we are where we are.
Question: do you guys have an estimated time of arrival for maybe the final production of your current models before you start developing new ones? I know Super is in its beta stage, but do you feel like you have an ETA for these early and beginning entry-level ETAs?
For the longest time, we were open to Genesis orders from anyone, and I guess that's still true. Like, we're kind of producing things in batches. We produce a bunch of sets, and then we say, "Hey, do we need to change anything before we put it out again?" Um, yeah, and we're kind of in an in-between phase for Genesis right now, where I have some left, but we're thinking about doing a little tweak and then doing another run. Constantly taking feedback from the community. But I'd say, if you want an ETA headphone, if it sounds like a good idea to you, there's probably no reason to hesitate. You can buy in at any time, and then if we ever come out with an upgraded model in the future, I'm very attached to this idea of allowing some sort of trade-in programs so that people can grow with us, as opposed to just saying, "Hey, you bought this headphone, now you're stuck with it." So yeah, I don't know. I think that we're constantly in a state of becoming. We're never in a state of saying, "Hey, this is like a done deal." So yeah, I would be open to anyone at any time coming along for the ride.
When you do those,
Awesome. I love.
oh, I'm sorry, Cybernetic. When you do those revisions and those kind of tweaks and that kind of thing, are they silent, or do you kind of say, okay, this is version 2.3 or 2.5 or version 3, or how do you kind of present that?
For now, all of the revisions that have taken place with Genesis, which has been out the longest, have been revisions to how the soft materials are used in the shell. So we haven't actually changed the shell design, even though we're thinking about doing a little tweak because we have our own customized headbands coming up, whereas we were using Sennheiser headbands before. But yeah, I'll kind of it's almost like posting updates to a recipe book. It can say, "Hey, I found this new tuning option that I like a lot. You can replicate it using these materials." And the other cool thing is a lot of the soft materials, the foam, the cotton, the different things that you can use to modify the headphone, I can send them to any owners at any time, basically for the cost of shipping. They cost me nothing. So anytime there's a tuning revision, I'm happy to help people get there as at as little cost as possible. So
Awesome. That sounds good. I've always had a dream of a headphone that is that perform made by a smaller manufacturer, like for example Zach and now you guys. I'm learning about you guys. I'm very happy to learn about you guys. That competes with all these very expensive headphones. And again, I know when I say compete, Ruck and all these guys start kind of cringing and that kind of thing. But what I mean is that to me sounds similar to these really kind of flagship headphones, whatever the driver type is, but for a substantially reduced cost. And I think in the model you have, where you're kind of a small team rather than a huge corporation that has to make lots of money, I think that is a dream that can be achieved, hopefully. And so I'm really looking forward to what you guys do, and I'm gonna be watching you very closely. And yeah, look forward to hearing your headphones one day.
Yeah, to what Smod said, I think as a community, we're excited for a brand that will let us grow with them. We want you guys to be sustainable. We want you guys to be profitable and to be able to continue doing what you're doing. But I love to hear that you guys are open to letting people grow. Hey, we've made revisions. Let me send you materials or ship it back and let make a change. Because I mean, we all want to enjoy better sound, and as consumers, we want to support the people who are putting in the work to get there. So, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do.
Yeah, can I step in and say I really like the idea. Uh, love what you guys are doing. I'm a ZMF owner. Love my Tours. Love what they do. It's a big dollar item when I bought it, and being able to grow the sound to tweaks and in the future without having to buy, put out that kind of dough again, but doing it incrementally, I think it's a really great idea. I don't think anybody else is really doing that. I might be ignorant to that fact, but doing a really well implemented headphone that is upgradable as you grow. Like you said, though, we as consumers can. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And yeah, I guess I wanted to say that ETA with the models that are constantly having tuning updates and revisions and like new things you can do with them. It's not for everyone. Some people won't like the rugged appearance of 3D printed shells, and I understand that. They look a certain way. They're rugged and they are durable. You can drop them on concrete from 6 feet and they won't get a scratch. But yeah, it's kind of like every sale is a bit of a handshake. We agree to provide the service of helping you tune the headphone to your preference and providing those materials. But then you also agree that sometimes a little bit of tweaking, a little bit of patience, a little bit of back and forth is might be required to get it to sound exactly how you want. But I really cherish those friendships that get developed from having those conversations, and I think that's probably been my favorite part so far.
Yeah, definitely. I one extra question I have is, do you see that as a problem in the audio industry and especially in the headphone industry, among kind of, I mean, of course there are headphones that are very very affordable, but in terms of the upper echelons, in terms of the price, do you see value being a big problem in hi-fi, where you're getting more and more headphones that are 4, 5, 6,000. Now there's companies that have $12,000 headphones. Do you see the kind of the concept of value being thrown out the window as a problem, especially with respect to sonic performance, right? Because it's fine to say that I want to pay X amount of dollars for something that's so beautiful and has so much machining and all that kind of thing. But to me, I think that we have a big problem with value, especially in the high end, just plummeting. And was that part of your kind of rationale for your company, and do you see that as a problem as it stands today?
Yeah. So for me, I think a lot of what drives up the price of like the higher echelons of headphone products is the emergent technologies that go into them. And I definitely think there's merit to those emerging technologies. Thinner diaphragms on planar magnetics, stronger magnets, and ribbon headphones. Like that's all great, and I'm happy to see it happening. But I also think that with all of these technologies that are in their infancy, the implementation of them to achieve a sonic target sometimes is something that's like not really invested in the research and development. They spend all the time figuring out how to make a perfect driver that once they put it in, they forget that the pads matter just as much to the sound, the damping matters just as much to the sound. So I think for me, I'm not as much interested in these emerging technologies because I feel like the older technologies haven't even been implemented in an ideal way yet. It's like, why abandon something that hasn't been totally explored and just ditch it and say, let's move on to the next best thing. I really think that there's a lot left in the world of like dynamics that can be explored. So and we saw that a lot in like the 80s and the 90s with planar magnetic technology kind of falling out of favor for dynamics, because dynamics were cheaper to produce, and planar magnetics were just considered to, even though they were like theoretically superior, they weren't implemented in a way that made the consumer feel it. But now we saw, a planar magnetic kind of renaissance in the early 2010s with Odyssey and Hi-Fi Man coming back, and then all of the like modding communities that spurred as a result of that. But I just feel like everybody's just scratching the surface, and even if they're covering new ground, they're not digging deep. And I'm as much interested in that digging deep as I am in covering new ground, especially if it means a more affordable product.
Awesome, great. Really appreciate that. And do you guys have anything else that you want to kind of tell everyone about Something maybe we didn't cover?
I don't know if y'all have the time or if we could find a way to make this work, but I would be willing to get on camera and do a total Genesis teardown and describe how it works if you want, but it might take a little bit of time.
Yeah. Let me see if. Hold on. I just want to know. I think I gotta figure out how I can expand your view, and I don't know if we can do that in a stage. There might be a way, but maybe we can. Unless somebody knows how to do that, maybe we can do a follow-up video where, yeah, we go through that and we kind of watch you kind of demo. I mean, do a video kind of demo. That would be really cool to see the build and the materials and that kind of thing. Anybody know how to, like, if I want to expand his view? If I don't know.
But what might be cool is if you can shoot an entire teardown, maybe we can do a follow-up call where you can do a live commentary of what you're doing as you're physically doing it. You know,
Yeah,
just so we can kind of ask
for sure.
questions about what we're seeing as we see it.
Definitely.
Because that way, you know, we could do the screen sharing through Discord and then still capture it, stream it through YouTube Live.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
perfect. We can figure that out for next time.
okay. Awesome. Awesome. So thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate it. Best of luck. I think it sounds like you guys are on the right track, and I think you guys are. Sounds like you're making some fantastic products, and there's more to come. So I look forward to it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much, Smod, and everyone here.
And thank you, Cybernetic. Thanks, Nick, for hopping in. And yeah, I'm sure we'll have follow up conversations for sure. And I'll contact you guys for follow up. So appreciate it. To everybody listening and watching, subscribe to the Sonic Visions YouTube channel. Join our Discord, our forum. And if you have any more questions for these guys, I think you guys have your own Discord too.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We can link.
Okay.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. If you guys are interested, just like either PM me or tag me on Sonic Visions, and then I can send you guys an invite link if that's okay with you, Smon.
Of course. Yeah. Of course. And I can even if you want to do, we can do like a partnership. I can put it in the partnership channel too, and so that way that everybody has easy access to it, and I can put it in the YouTube description as well. Do you guys have a YouTube channel too, or no?
Oh yeah, we just made one.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'll be great.
Yeah, we'll link to that as well, and yeah, that sounds fantastic. So thanks a lot, guys, and until next time.
Cheers.
Talk to you guys. We look forward to next time.
All right. See you guys later.
Okay, later.